Last thing we're going to draw is going to be a table. So we're going to draw a table, and this table is going to be all about our largest phylum of animals, our largest phylum that we talk about this whole semester, the Arthropoda. So it makes sense that we want to keep a few things straight in our minds about how we understand what different Arthropoda are. Okay, so first we're going to divide into, I'm going to put all of our categories over on this one. And we're going to have 7 classes within the phylum Arthropoda, which we'll get to. But first, we've got 2 subphyla that we should be concerned with. They're called Chelicerata and roughly halfway, maybe a little bit less than halfway. Mandibulata. All right, so these 2 subphyla are defined by different arrangements of the mouth parts. So the Chelicerata have mouth parts that are more hand-like or chelate. It's what Chelicerata or Chelicerata refers to. Mandibulata means mouth parts that are more jaw-like you have a mandible. Okay, so within the Mandibulata, because it is so hyperdiverse, we've got 2 superclasses, which we're going to call Myriapoda, which means many legs, and the other one is called Pancrustacea. So it's going to include crustaceans, but it's also going to include something else. All right, so let's get into our classes of arthropods. So within the Chelicerata, we've got 3. They are Merostomata, Pycno, P-Y-C-N-O, Pycno, G-O-N-I-D-A, Pycnogonida, and Arachnida, A-R-A-C-H-N-I-D-A. And on the exam, you won't need to spell them, but you'll need to recognize these words. Within the Myriapoda, we're going to have 2 classes. Within Pancrustacea, we're going to have 2 classes. Within the Myriapoda, we've got Chilopoda, and Diplopoda or Diplopoda, depending on who's saying it. Then within Pancrustacea, we've got the Crustacea, and we've got Hexapoda. Let's talk common names for the classes. Not all of them have common names. Some of these things, maybe you've never heard of them before, but maybe you have. So you probably heard of a horseshoe crab, Meristomata are horseshoe crabs. Pycnogonida are sometimes called sea spiders. You might say, sea spiders? I thought spiders were arachnids. Well, they are, but we're not going to say that the arachnida are the spiders. We'll get to why in a moment. But we're just going to call the arachnida the arachnids, because it includes more than just spiders. Chilopoda, you've probably known as centipedes. Diplopoda are millipedes. Crustacea are our crustaceans. And hexapoda, for the most part, almost all hexapods, minus a handful of oddballs, are insects. Now let's talk tagmosis. So all of the arthropods have an exoskeleton, and that exoskeleton is arranged in such a way that we have different body regions. So in the Meristomata, we've got two body parts called a prosoma and an opistosoma. So kind of like a front part and a back part. They used to be called cephalothorax and abdomen, but that is not accurate. So for all of our Chelicerata, they're all going to have this arrangement where they've got a prosoma and an opistosoma, so P-O, P-O, P-O. Centipedes, they have a head, and then they have a number of other segments. We just refer to those collectively as the trunk. The same is true for millipedes, head and trunk. Crustaceans, they do have a cephalothorax and an abdomen. So why do they get to have a cephalothorax and an abdomen, whereas our Chelicerata have to have a prosoma and an opistosoma? The difference is that a cephalothorax is the result of an evolutionary fusion of a head and a thorax, whereas a prosoma is not a fusion. It's just one part that has never been, throughout its evolutionary history, two separate parts. So that's why prosoma and opistosoma is more accurate versus cephalothorax and abdomen for crustaceans. Insects, hopefully we recall, we've got a head, we've got a thorax, we've got an abdomen. So already, hopefully this is showing us some evolutionary trends that help to group things into our superclasses and into our subphyla. Let's talk about antennae. Well, none of the Chelicerata have antennae. So no spiders have antennae. No scorpions have antennae. No ticks have antennae. None of our Chelicerata have antennae. But our myriapods each have one pair. Crustaceans have 2 pairs, and insects have 1 pair. So Mandibulata, all the antennae. Chelicerata, none of the antennae. Legs. And these are walking legs. Are there other kind of legs? There kind of are, but... Arachnids, how many legs do arachnids have? You probably know this because you know that spiders have 8 legs. Arranged as 4 pairs. So the 4 pairs of legs on a spider, very different from the 8 arms on an octopus. You would not confuse those 2 things. Now, you might be thinking that, oh, centipedes, it means 100 feet. So it's going to have 50 pairs of legs. And that would be wrong. Most of the time, almost all the time, you're going to find that centipedes don't have exactly 100 legs, just like millipedes don't have exactly 1,000 legs. But what they do have is 1 pair of legs per trunk segment in the centipedes, and 2 pairs per diplosegment or trunk section in the millipedes. So a diplosegment, it turns out that millipedes have 2 pairs of legs per segment because the segments have fused together from an ancestor that had 1 pair of legs per segment. So we call those diplosegments. But if you just remember that there's 2 pairs per segment in millipedes, that's okay. But it's not exactly 1,000, it's not exactly 100. It has to do with how many trunk segments there are. And that's something that increases throughout the animal's life. Remember, these are all animals that shed their exoskeleton as they need to grow. And as they need to grow, they add more trunk segments. So a young centipede or millipede is going to have fewer trunk segments to go with the head. The older they get, the more segments they add on. Okay, with the crustaceans, it varies quite a bit. So I'm just going to say that as an example, one thing we see in the crustaceans is having 5 pairs. Because the most familiar crustaceans to most people are the Decapoda, which have 10 legs. And we should know from our previous drawing that insects have 3 pairs of legs. They're hexapods. This one's going to go very quickly. Wings. Nope. Nope. No. No thank you. Nuh-uh. 2 pair. So insects are the only arthropods that have wings. They're the only invertebrates that have wings. And they have 2 pairs. Now let's talk about examples. And this is where we kind of delve a little bit into the diversity of these groups. For horseshoe crabs, it's just going to be horseshoe crabs. Which horseshoe crabs, notice that they're not crustaceans, so they're their own separate class of organisms, just like sea spiders. If you were to see one, well, you're probably going to be swimming or in a museum. They're going to look very different from the spiders that you're used to seeing on land. Arachnids, so it does include spiders. But arachnids also include scorpions, ticks, mites, what I always call daddy longlegs. Some people call them granddaddy longlegs. And it turns out that daddy longlegs are not spiders. They are arachnids, but they are in a separate order from the Aranidae, which is the order of the true spiders. So one way you can tell is that daddy longlegs, they do not have a very clear distinction between the prosoma and the opistosoma. Spiders are narrowly attached, prosoma to opistosoma, whereas daddy longlegs are broadly attached. But both of them have 8 legs. They are both arachnids. And there's a lot of other arachnids that I'm not going to mention here. Centipedes are centipedes. It is a diverse group. There are some very, very large centipedes, giant centipedes found in areas like Southeast Asia. Millipedes, too, are also a diverse group, but when you saw one, you would probably say, oh, it's a millipede, unless you were a millipede taxonomist. Then we get into something like the crustaceans, and the crustaceans are crazy diverse. Crabs, shrimps, lobsters, crawfish. Now we're getting into the less tasty things like barnacles, copepods, isopods, roly-polies. You probably encountered roly-polies and might have thought they were insects. Then you flip one over and you might, next time you see one, go ahead and give it a little flip over before it curls up into a little ball. You might notice it's got more than 6 legs. It's got quite a few legs. And that is a big clue that you are not dealing with an insect. You're dealing with something that's like an insect. It's got an exoskeleton, but it is not an insect. Turns out they are land-living crustaceans, are the roly-polies. Daphnia, the water fleas from the labs that you may have encountered in the past, those are also crustaceans. As far as hexapods go, let's move over to there now. Flies, like house flies. But there's a number of other types of insects that are called flies because they fly, but they're not in the same order as the flies, like, for example, butterflies, dragonflies, and damselflies, beetles, bees, ants, and we could go on and on and on because, again, this is a very, very diverse group of animals. The Hexapoda and the Crustacea both include a huge amount of the diversity of animals that are on this planet and have been on this planet. So hopefully this will help you to arrange in your mind the organization of the arthropods.